and I really appreciate that. The weight distribution on this car is about 55-45 in this RCF, and it's about 54-46 in the LC, so it's a little bit more neutral, a little bit more balanced. Talking more so about the driving dynamics, like I mentioned before, weight distribution a little bit better, so the chassis is a lot more neutral on the LC 500, but despite that, most importantly, that's a car built to a whole nother price bracket. Essentially, the chassis on that LC is actually stiffer and more rigid than the LFA supercar, so they just went next level with that thing. You know, the double jointed, double nut, whatever it is, suspension components that they use in the front suspension, it's ridiculous. All the aluminum that they use in constructing that car, the carbon reinforced plastics, it's all insane, all the stuff that they pulled off with the LC 500. This car doesn't really have any of that, and it's not quite a two-door IS either. I mean, like I mentioned, this car is actually a GS up front, a Lexus IS convertible in the middle, and like an IS, like a new generation IS in the rear end. It's very like complex. I don't know how they did it or why they did it that way, but whatever. Obviously, this RCF is far superior than like the old ISF. Essentially, that was like the first generation of that car. I still love driving this car, but again, you know, like I just went over that huge bump right there, that little jostling sensation, you wouldn't have gotten that with the LC 500. The LC 500 is a far more substantial feeling, like luxury car type of thing. It's a very unique vehicle. I've never driven a car that feels like an LC 500, that very just big, substantial feeling car. This feels light, small, and actually just moves you about when you go over the bumps. It's still a comfortable car, don't get me wrong, but it's just like that jostling sensation. You get that here. There's also, this car is not quite as refined or quiet as the LC is. This car, a little bit more road noise. Again, far quieter than the cars that are competing in this class, but there's a lot more road noise. But again, this car uses that Michelin Pilot 4S summer tire, so there's a little bit more tire noise and just naturally with this car. LC is a far quieter car when you have the windows up. Now, let's see, let's talk about this here in a bit. This whole transmission, 8-speed transmission, right, is what you get here. Speed transmission. I like this transmission. I don't like it as much as the 10-speed in the LC though, and that's why is that? It's because, well, the 10-speed and the engine, everything is tuned completely different from this. This car, it's only, like as you just saw there, this thing will shift extremely sharp in both the manual mode and we have in Sport Plus. The LC will shift that crisp and that well even in the normal mode, but even in the normal mode of the LC, it's still better than this in Sport Plus. This is just not as crispy, but the reaction is still very good. But most importantly though, this engine is, there's no real like exhaust sounds or anything like that. See, turning in here. Braking performance is great on both cars. It's not even remotely an issue. There's always an idiot that needs to get in front of me, but regardless. Great stuff there. Acceleration actually feels about the same, but like I was mentioning before I got cut off there, the engine sound, everything is tuned so much better in the LC 500. When you just get on the throttle just a little bit here, I'll put this back in the normal mode. When you just tip into the throttle of the LC, you have like this big kind of burbly V8 sound that comes on. It's not just the exhaust, it's like the engine actually sounds far superior when you just tip into the throttle. When you just roll onto it, it's so mechanical and kind of crispy sounding. I absolutely love it. This car sounds great, but not like that. It's still like a traditional big V8 sound, but it's primarily just induction sound and engine noise. That's about all you get. And because this 8-speed transmission has like this kind of whiny sound to it, similar actually to the RC 350 F Sports, like that big whiny sound you get onto the throttle. You have that sensation here primarily because it kind of uses like the same 8-speed, I guess. But the LC is like the trifecta of noises. It's got the exhaust, it's got the induction, the engine sound, everything. Everything is 10x what this car is essentially, right? And that's what a spec sheet can never tell you. Yeah, the performance figures, the engine is very similar, but it's just like those nuanced details you'll never understand unless you've driven both of these cars. That's the main thing here. And let me tell you about the LC 500's exhaust. Like, I was actually listening to the car when I was in this vehicle. I had the window down to this, and the upshifts, like the exhaust sound in the LC 500, it is so loud, dude. It'll bust your eardrum. It is so loud, but you will never really know or understand that when you just drive the LC 500. When you're just sitting in the driver's seat with the windows up, you would never be able to tell it's that loud from the outside, but it is, and it's absolutely tremendous. This car, again, if you want an exhaust with this car, you really need to go up to the track edition of this, which is very expensive. I would not take a track edition version of this, although I have not driven it, to the LC 500. The LC is just next level, but you would get a titanium exhaust with the RCF, but again, still wouldn't get it. If I was spending 100 racks, I'm getting the LC all day, every day, because the LC is not just a $100,000 automobile. It feels closer more so to a $250,000 car is what the LC 500 feels like, both in the way it drives, when you sit in it, the ride quality, everything about it is just so much superior. This is still overkill for the streets, this RCF. You know, I'm not trying to downplay this car. Like I mentioned in the review, I still love driving this car. It has its own kind of unique lightweight feel to it that's kind of fun to whip it around. You know, it's a little bit more tail happy than the LC 500 because it's got a little less weight hanging off the rear end there, so not as much grip, I guess. The chassis isn't as sorted out, so it's a little bit more fun to, it's a little bit more playful, the RCF, so you have that whole thing going on. It's still comfy, you know, compared to M3s and, you know, other performance cars. You know, this rides way better, you know what I'm saying? So there is that. Steering feels pretty similar. It's a little bit, I guess, slightly heavier in the RCF, but primarily it's just like those engine tones, the ride quality, those are the big things right there, and the overall substantial feel of the LC, which we're about to see when we get inside the LC 500. It's just absolutely tremendous. But both have like this dual nature with the transmission, where they feel very relaxed when you're just driving around in them. They feel like you're just driving around in a Lexus ES or an RX or whatever. But the LC is just so much more sharper, so much more crisper. Yeah, it's heavier, and I love that. The weight, the high curb weight cars, especially on a great chassis, is what gives it that big, substantial, meaty feel. It just digs into the tarmac, gives you a nice confidence sensation. So there is that. But you do feel like you're whipping this very substantial car around. It's not quite as playful as this. It's more of the youthful vehicle, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I definitely need that LC 500 over this. Honestly, my choice. But again, value proposition. If you buy this car right, if you lease this car right, it can be a great choice, because if you're looking at an LC and you're thinking you can skimp out and just get the RCF, it's not even remotely going to be the same experience. You're going to have a great time, but if you drove them both back to back, if you saw them both back to back, you're going to go LC regardless. And again, there's those certified pre-owned options. You know, for the price of this one brand new, you can get a certified pre-owned LC 500. So there's that. But if you only like to buy new cars, yes, this is cheaper, but just don't bloat this thing up with a lot of unnecessary options, because there's a lot of options where Lexus will make a killing off of you, like the carbon performance package or whatever. It's like 11 grand on this thing. Fully loaded, this thing can be over $90,000. That's in no way, shape, or form is that much money worth it for an RCF. But you go light on the options, you get it for a little under like $70,000. That makes a whole lot of sense. I got about a $9,000 discount when I bought my 2020 LC, but the 2021s were right around the corner, so there's that. But yes, driving-wise, they're both comfy, they're both relaxed, they have like this nice dual nature to it. Yes, of course, the LC 500 will get sideways, and they're both very communicative cars. However, the LC is just that superior kind of luxury car, if you will. Both inside out, driving-wise, everything-wise. So, no, you can't just judge these cars based off of a spec sheet like most journalists will. I feel like I've heard a few people say like they actually like the RCF or a GSF more. That's preposterous to me. I don't know what you're using to critique these vehicles. You're very blind to the fact if you think an LC is like the same thing as these vehicles. And again, I'm not just saying that because I own the thing or I'm trying to justify the thing. It truly is a superior car. And if you've driven both of these cars, I feel like you probably agree with me. Most normal people would anyway. No, the 0.2 seconds to 60, that's not what these things are about. These things are about those naturally aspirated V8s. Very special ring out. Both these vehicles, you had to get it past 4,000 RPM for it to really give you that meaty thrust. Because honestly, some even turbocharged mid-sized cars or SUVs can probably get the jump on these cars. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. You have to really ring these things out, and that's fine by me, but it's just like you have to be able, if you live and die by naturally aspirated vehicles, then you should be able to respect these cars. But if you're like, if you're looking for that instant gratification, you're not going to get that. You're going to get that here. I mean, these cars are very kind of rev happy car, so there is that. But again, I'm not going to rehash all this because I just did a full in-depth review on these cars. The interior, again, does not hold a candle to an LC. This is pretty much a carryover IS RC 350 interior, essentially. It's fine. I love it. It's super solid. It has about 9,000 miles on it, and it's held up perfectly. There's no issues with it. I absolutely love it. You know, the exact same Mark Levinson stereo system sounds great. The paddle shifters are not as good as it is in the LC, but they're still very nice. I still appreciate using them. Infotainment's the same. Gauge cluster doesn't move around, but everything else is great. I mean, it's got its own like unique characteristic to it. You know, I still like this interior space. I still like driving this car, being in this car. It's still great. Again, you buy it right, you finance it, you lease it, whatever, at the right price, it makes a whole lot of sense over the LC, because you could potentially get this for 20 to 30 grand less money, especially if you're going to keep it long term. That could make sense, you know, a lot less investment on your part, especially in the used market. But yeah, I like that. I will admit the seat coolers don't work as well as it does in the LC. It actually barely even works at all, even at the highest setting, so there's that. The LC has a digital shift lever thing here. This one actually has like a physical one, so I do like that. You have a foot operated parking brake, which you have an electric one in the LC, so there is that. You know, that's a physical handbrake. You know, that's kind of interesting. I like that. You know, both have this bezel-less mirror thing going on, but most importantly, this actually might also sway you as well. MPG wise, it's about the same, you know, same motor and all that, but practically this is the far superior car to the RCF. Despite it being a smaller vehicle to the LC, this is a far more usable car, both in the back seats and the trunk. I actually fit in the back seat of this car, and actually the trunk is far larger, and you can actually fit more things back there. The opening is bigger. It's great. I love it. And you actually fit like a large set of golf clubs back there, I'm assuming, without any issues. And this particular model does come with the wing that comes up and down. You have a button here to raise and lower it. You can't even see it from the rear window here, but it is what it is. Oh, by the way, these seats are different. It's the F Sport seats, but I still love the performance seats in the LC 500. That's still phenomenal. I absolutely love that. These doors are not as heavy as the LC 500. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to open and close, despite the LC using carbon reinforced plastics and whatever. I have no idea how that car is so heavy. I'm not complaining about it, but it's just interesting. But both of these cars are practical cars to drive. The ground clearance on these cars are excellent. Over 5 inches for both of these cars. You can clear speed bumps, driveways, anything in these cars. That's not something you could say about a lot of the other low-slung vehicles like Corvettes and things of that nature. This is a far more practical car to drive every day. I drove both of these cars in flooding rains and no issues whatsoever. So despite these cars, especially the LC, looking very low-slung, you can drive these cars every day, no problem, clear anything. That's the appeal I like about these cars. They look like traditional coupes. They're breaking necks. Some guy in a Tesla was just busting his whole neck in half just to look at this thing. So the RCF, I mean, so you can imagine what the LC is like. So with that established, let's go ahead and let's get into the LC 500 and do a quick comparison and end this review off. Okay, well, hopping into the LC 500 now. Obviously, I've done full review on this car as well, so you can go ahead and watch that as well. But this LC, you know, immediately when you get into it, you know, first of all, I would like to say both these cars are very easy to get in and out of. However, with the LC, with the longer door and all that stuff, it's a little bit more difficult to get into this one every day, but that's still fine. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's like I mentioned, you know, these cars, they look very low slung, but they're actually not. They have over five inches of ground clearance, which is about the same as most, like, you know, mid-size family cars. So that's pretty impressive. You would never guess just by looking at these cars. But, you know, again, the looks. Obviously, this is a $100,000 automobile, and it certainly looks like it. Due to crash regulations and all that good stuff, the LC, it's very hard to get a car to look like the LC 500. They had to move a lot of things around. That's why even though this car looks the way it does, even though it's a larger vehicle, there's no real interior space because they had to make room for crash bracings and airbags and all that good stuff. So that's why interior wise it's actually not that big. So there is that, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because you look at this car, it's got Ferrari levels of attention, essentially, especially in this infrared color, which this is a bespoke color to the Lexus LC, but rest assured the white color on the metallic white on the RCF still looks phenomenal. All the Lexus kind of colors look incredible, but everybody breaks their necks to look at this thing. I mean, it's unbelievable. It doesn't matter if you're old, young, whatever. The RCF was already doing that, so this is just that times 10. So to some of you, maybe that attention is too much. So I don't know, maybe get this car in black or dark blue or something like that. I don't know, but the RCF is more so of an appropriate amount of bling. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, you know, this car with the big 21-inch rims and all that stuff, that's the other incredible part, right? This car actually rides better than the RCF with 19-inch wheels. So you can imagine, this is a 2020 model year. Obviously, they made it a little bit more comfy compared to the 2018 model years. That was one of the big changes. And 2021, they retuned the suspension to ride even better for the LC 500. So you get a 2021 LC with 20-inch forged wheels on it. That's going to be one of the best riding cars. This already is one of the best riding sports cars out there. 2021 is going to be even better. So there's that. But this is still very good, and it's actually superior to the RCF because it just went over some big bumps right there, and it doesn't have that jostling sensation. It doesn't move you about quite as much. When you pilot this car, it feels far more superior, planted, heavy. You know, you have that more of a traditional luxury car sensation. Everything about this car is heavy, from the doors. It's the most bank vault feeling out there. And here's another thing that people don't really mention with these cars, you know, the safety. Because these cars are so heavy and big and substantial, they are far more safer cars than your typical kind of Mustangs and Camaros and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Those are far more cheaply made tin can cars. I love those cars. I appreciate those cars for the price point, but you're not going to have like the same refinement levels. And this car is extremely refined because it's a full-on kind of luxury car. It's not double pane glass, but it's just like, it's very thick glass in both the RCF and this car. But this car is far quieter, and it doesn't quite have the same aggressive Michelin summer tires on this car. So it's got the what do you call it, run flats on it, so it's still slightly noisy, but due to just how refined this car is, you hardly even notice it. I mean, it's so much quieter. There's literally no wind noise or anything like that with these RCF cars and the LC 500s. The LS has a lot more wind noise, which is surprising to me, but this is just, they're both fun. They're like both at the top of motoring experiences, basically. They're just great for street cars, essentially. I absolutely just love driving these cars. It's great. But, you know, I just busted a big turn right there. You know, the LC 500, far superior chassis, of course. That's another big thing with these vehicles. Chassis control is just so much more like solid and rigid in here. And that's just another thing that no car is really going to match that. You know, no German car, whatever. This is just such a rigid chassis. And like I mentioned in the RC F Drive, the weight distribution is superior. It's about 54-46, so it's closer to that 50-50 mark of weight distribution. So I like that. Again, gives it a lot more planted feel, a lot more of a neutral balance with this car, right? And there's just something special about a high curb weight and a nice chassis. It's just incredible when a car can handle this much weight this well. And again, it translates into that big, substantial feel out on the road. This is a bigger car to the LC 500, so you're a little bit more cognizant about that. It's only 2 inches longer and 3 inches wider, but it makes a big difference, I'm telling you. And, you know, that big bump I just went over, you hardly felt it in this car, but in the RCF, you would have just bounced all around, which is unfortunate, but true. These bikers are going to get somebody killed one of these days. I'm in normal mode right now, and it's so crispy, the gear shifts. It's just phenomenal. And the way Lexus describes these transmissions and all that, it's like a musical instrument, if you will. You know, that's how they describe these things, and I would have to agree with them. I mean, it's like operating a little symphony, an orchestra. That's what this thing is, and this engine just sounds unbelievable. It's the same engine as the RCF, but the RCF does not sound anywhere near as good as this. You know, when you just kind of tip into the throttle, not only is it effortless, unlike the piece of paper suggests, but it's just, it sounds so much better. And there's a legitimate exhaust with this car as well. It just snap, crackles, and pops here. Put it in the Sport Plus mode for you here. That's when it really gets sharper. transmission in this is actually the best transmission I've ever used, superior to PDKs and C8 Corvettes and all that. This car will definitely get sideways, but not in the same way as the RCF. They're both very controlled, but this feels far more neutral. Another thing you have to keep in mind, which I forgot to mention in the RCF review and the comparison actually, when you operate the paddle shifters in this car, yes, this is a 10-speed and the RCF is a 8-speed transmission, but when you're on the paddles, this is actually just like a 5/6-speed transmission when you use it, because that's just the way they programmed it and they tuned it, because the other gears are just overdrive gears for the highway driving, essentially, to get better fuel economy, because both these cars will get like 30 mpg out on the highway, which is just unbelievable to me. But much the same with the C8 Corvette or C7 Corvette as well. These cars, these naturally aspirated V8s, will achieve great fuel economy on the highway, because it just, there's no stress with these cars, because it's just, you don't have to wind these cars out. They're so powerful. To do speed limit driving, it's effortless for these cars, but you know, you're going to be driving like an animal, so you're going to be getting 14 in the city, so that's one of the things you have to keep in mind. But yeah, like you just saw there, this is the best transmission. I mean, I'm not even going to lie to you guys, out of all the cars I've driven, this is my most favorite one. And I'm not just saying that because I own the thing. Well, that's part of the reason why I own it, but you might be thinking I'm just trying to justify because I own the thing. It's really not, dude. I've driven everything, your little C8s, your little M3s, and all the cars that you like to jerk off to, and you like to, you know, all these vehicles, I've driven them all, and this is by far the best one to me, and there's just no comparison. This is still superior, of course, to the RCF. You know, it's just handling these turns effortlessly, something that a piece of paper can never properly describe to you guys. These paddle shifters are superior. They're just big magnesium paddle shifters, of course. It's just next level. But again, I think number one, you know, yes, the RCF is comfortable, but you know, the comfort of this is what I love the most. I just love how daily drivable these cars are, and they're so easy to see out of despite being big coupes. The sight lines are easy. The seating position is so good. Actually, that's another thing. The seating position of the RCF is great for me at 5'11", but actually it might be a little bit on the higher side for certain individuals if you're taller. The seating position in the LC 500 is just perfection. You know, they measured human weight and, like, you know, the hip placement and all that stuff when they developed the LC. There's just the research and development, the money spent, it's just ridiculous with the LC 500. It's its own dedicated big luxury platform vehicle. It's unbelievable, dude, what they pulled off with this car. It's the closest thing to like normal people have to getting to the LFA supercar, essentially. And I appreciate the RCF because it did come after the LFA. You know, that's the car that came directly after, the performance car that, you know, came after the LFA, essentially. But the LC 500 is just more so that special vehicle, I guess, because again, the exhaust and all that stuff, the burble coming from this engine, the induction tone, all of it is just amplified here. And the exhaust, like I mentioned, the RCF driving segment, dude, this thing will bust people's eardrums. It's ridiculous how loud this thing is from the outside. I mean, it sounds good on the inside, but when you have like the windows down, when you hear it from the outside, it is just mega. I love it. And it's great because the outside, you know, other noises that you don't want to hear, like tire noise, wind noise, stuff like that, this car does a better job of isolating you from that, but it just translates all that engine and induction sound to you. So again, a great engineering achievement right there. Steering is still great. It's a little bit more on the lighter side. Actually, makes this big vehicle feel a little bit more easier to drive. Another thing I have to keep in mind, my car does not have the performance package on it. So that $5,000 option, this vehicle does not have it. But real quick, before I get into the performance package, dude, this turn signal, it's so much better. That's another thing I forgot to mention in the what do you call it, the RCF driving segment. It's got that stupid turn signal, just like the BMW, where you have to like softly tap it up to like cancel and stuff. It doesn't automatically turn off or whatever. It's so obnoxious. I hate that. So that's another thing with the RCF. I don't know why they didn't update that for 2020, but whatever. This LC 500 thankfully has a normal turn signal. But anyway, my car does not have the performance package, so it doesn't have the rear wheel steering. I've heard from others that the rear wheel steering does make a huge difference with these cars. It makes it feel a lot smaller, a lot more nimble. This is feeling like a very substantial car to me, and I personally like that feeling. But if you want that light feel similar to what the RCF has, I believe you can get that with the performance package. I just like how natural, more organic this is. You know, the rear wheels aren't turning. I feel like this is how the LC is, you know, it's not hiding anything. I do love cars with the rear wheel steering. It's not unnatural to me in any way, but I'm just saying, I just like the way that this feels even without it. So I don't think it's a big deal for most people. So I really appreciate the way that this is feeling right now. Obviously, there's no creaks and rattles with these cars. I mean, these are the epitome of quality. This is true quality of interior, of build quality, of everything. That's just the way it is. You know, my car has about 1,100 miles on it by now. The RCF had close to 9,000 miles on it. So both these cars age perfectly. Again, I reviewed 200, quarter-million-mile Lexus cars. They are just the most solid, best aging cars they can possibly get. You know, speed bumps right here, no issues clearing it. You don't have to do that diagonal stuff if you don't want to. I have never scraped this car actually. And again, much like the RCF, I had this thing out on flooding, rain-like conditions, and it coped extremely well. It's just like driving any other normal car. So that's another thing. They're just practical cars that you don't have to worry about. And obviously, reliability, it speaks for itself. This is like the most reliable performance motor that you can possibly get. So there's that. No turbos again. I think the RCF, you know, that transmission, that 8-speed, you know, it's been out for so long, it's probably going to hold up a little bit better. This 10-speed, I think it's a new thing for them, so I'm sure it's going to hold up fine, don't get me wrong, but RCF, just a little bit more basic, if you will. It's got like a basic parking brake, foot operated, whereas this one's like more electronic, so there's that. But yeah, anybody who tells you that an LC and an RCF drives exactly the same, they're just a fool, essentially. I mean, it's totally not the same thing, both in the sounds, the comfort, driving, handling, any of that stuff. It's a totally different feel. So if you aspire to own an LC, keep aspiring, and one day you'll get it, either certified pre-owned, lease it, do whatever. It's more obtainable than you think. You know, very easy to drive these cars. You know, the RCF a little bit easier because it's smaller, but you know, you can still bust a U-turn with this thing. Pretty tight, not bad at all. Yeah, very tight turns in both of these cars, but the RCF, again, a little bit easier to manage because it is that smaller vehicle, so there's that. Now, let's talk about some other things here, because another big difference between this car and the RCF is actually the interior, as you would know. This interior, I mean, it makes every other car's interior look like a Motel 6 bathroom. I've said this multiple times already, but it's just the truth. And no, the RCF is no different. It can't hold a candle to the interior of this particular car. This is just next level. I mean, again, I'm not going to rehash everything because I did full reviews on both of these cars, but this thing is full leather, suedes, you know what I'm saying? All the different materials that they use to build this car, to craft this car, it's just next level. Again, appropriate for a 6-figure vehicle, but like I keep mentioning, it's not so much of a $100,000 vehicle, it's more so of a $250,000 driving experience and interior to sit in and experience. Now, again, I have like this toasted caramel interior thing going on here, so the whole steering wheel, everything about it, it's just next level to look at. Of course, the suedes, I mean, it's just such a plush interior space. Now again, one big difference though I will say is the seats. So the seats in the RCF will probably accommodate larger body frames, I feel like, better than the LC 500. You have to be a little bit more petite nature. I'm about kind of as big as it gets, as wide as it gets, to enjoy these seats. They are phenomenal plush seats, of course. Positioning is great, everything is great, but if you're a little bit larger, it might be a little bit more difficult to squeeze into the LC 500, just something I noticed. But the aluminums, the door handles, everything about it, the solidity, it's actually even more superior to the RCF. It's just crazy. I really appreciate that. Just the small things like the steering wheel, the gear shifting knob, right, that this thing has. They use 4 different leathers. They tried so many different things. They spend so much time crafting this stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous. So it shows it's superior. However, there are some things that the RCF does that's superior to this, like the LC 500. You actually have to go into the screen here to control your heated steering wheel and your heated and cooled seats. The car has it, that's great, but I hate how you had to actually screw with the screen to access those controls, whereas in the RCF and in every other Lexus other than the LC and the LS, you actually have physical buttons to access your heated seats, cooled seats, and heated steering wheel. So that's a little annoyance I found there. Also, there's a lot more glare with this screen in harsh sunlight than there is with the RCF, even though it's the same screen and all that. That's another thing I noticed there. Otherwise, the climate control is separated from the screen. I like that, easy to use. Same infotainment, of course. Interior storage space far better in the RCF. But the door pockets are a little bit better here in the LC. Automatic, windows, stuff like that, that's great. But the rear seats, less useful in the LC than it is in the RCF. I actually fit far more comfortably, surprisingly, in the RCF rear seats than I do in this LC 500. So another thing I want to keep in mind. Also, the gauge cluster actually moves in this one. It's actually stationary in the in the RCF, so it's another thing I have to keep in mind. My car has a HUD, heads-up display, if that matters to you. But the trunk is far more useless in the LC than it is in the RCF. Far bigger trunk in the RCF, so more of a practical car, the RCF, compared to the LC 500. But again, both these cars are an emotional purchase. This is the far more emotion-filled vehicle, both inside, out, driving-wise, everything. The characteristics of this car far superior in the LC 500, so it's another thing you have to keep in mind with these things. I wouldn't have it any other way. Obviously, I made my choice. LC is just a superior car in pretty much every way. But again, not to downplay the RCF, I still love that car. Either certified pre-owned or you buy it at a high discount rate and you go light on the options. I still think the RCF makes a lot of sense to finance or pay cash for or something like that, especially if you get in the 60K range new. So that's a pretty good option there. But you're not going to go wrong with either of them. I still love driving both for their own unique special reasons. So try them both out. I like both. But again, if you think you're going to get what this car can do in that, you're sadly mistaken. So please don't think that. Even though it's a more track prep vehicle or whatever, it's got like the transmission coolers and oil coolers up front. This car doesn't have that. It doesn't have the slotted brake discs, although both cars stop tremendously well. There's another little tidbit there. But hopefully you enjoyed this little quick comparison, or this very long comparison. Hopefully you found value with it. If you've driven both cars, please let me know your thoughts. I have not driven a GSF. I would like to though. But thank you again for watching. Take care and goodbye.